The land stretched farther than the eye could see, quiet and open just the way Daniel had always known it. But now, that same land was filled with movement and structure. Rows of houses were rising in perfect alignment, machines carving paths like everything had been planned long ago. Dust moved through the air as workers continued without pause. And the strangest part, no one had told Daniel anything about it. That silence was the first thing that didn't sit right with him. He stood at the edge of the site, watching everything unfold without interrupting. Workers moved confidently, following routines as if this project had always belonged here. No one stopped to question the work. No one looked confused. It was all too organized. But Daniel knew this land better than anyone else ever could. Every corner, every boundary, every detail, and what he was seeing now didn't match that reality at all. He slowly pulled out his phone and opened his property records. The digital map displayed clear boundary lines, each one exactly where it had always been. He zoomed in, checked again, and compared it with what was in front of him. There was no mistake in the documents. This land was his, officially, clearly, without any doubt. Yet everything happening around him suggested something entirely different. Not far from him, a woman moved through the construction site with complete confidence. She gave instructions, checked progress, and spoke to workers like she was in full control. Her presence carried authority. The workers followed her direction without hesitation. Daniel watched her closely, noticing how naturally she fit into the scene. To her, there was no question about being here. She clearly believed she belonged. Daniel walked toward her calmly, his pace steady and controlled. There was no anger in his expression, no rush in his steps. When he reached her, he introduced himself politely and kept his tone even. He didn't accuse or interrupt. He simply asked a direct question, something clear and simple. Who approved this entire project? She responded with a relaxed smile, completely unfazed. Her posture showed confidence, like she had answered this kind of question before. According to her, everything had already been approved. Permits were handled, planning was complete, and the development was fully authorized. She spoke as if there was no room for doubt at all. At least, that was what she believed. Daniel listened carefully and then showed her his documents. The boundaries were clearly outlined, easy to understand, and supported by official records. He pointed to specific details, calmly explaining everything step by step, but she only glanced at them briefly. Her reaction didn't show concern. Instead, it showed certainty that she didn't need to look deeper. Soon, an officer arrived to observe the situation. He approached both sides calmly, maintaining a neutral and professional presence. There was no tension in the air, no raised voices. Everything remained controlled and respectful. He listened carefully as both explained their understanding. But even after hearing everything, nothing was fully resolved at that moment. Daniel stepped back instead of continuing the discussion. He didn't argue or push further. Instead, he chose to observe quietly. His eyes moved across the nearly completed homes, taking in every detail. A different approach began forming in his mind. Sometimes, reacting immediately doesn't reveal the full picture, and Daniel understood that well. Days passed, and construction continued without interruption. House after house reached completion, each one adding to the growing neighborhood. Roads were laid out, structures were finished, and everything appeared organized and efficient. From the outside, it looked like success, a perfectly planned development, and Daniel allowed it all to continue, without stepping in. Home. Daniel reviewed all his documents again, this time with even more focus. Every paper was carefully arranged, every record checked and rechecked. There were no missing details, no confusion in any of the information. Everything pointed to the same truth again and again. The facts were clear, and they were firmly on his side. He arranged a meeting with a legal expert and brought every document with him. Together, they reviewed everything step by step, discussing each detail carefully. The process was calm, structured, and precise. Nothing seemed complicated. In fact, the situation appeared stronger than it had at first glance. The clarity in the documents made everything straightforward. Meanwhile, the construction project reached its final stages. The houses stood completed, the streets clean and aligned, and the entire neighborhood looked ready for residents. It resembled a well-planned community, something that would easily blend into any suburban area. From the outside, nothing seemed unusual. Everything looked exactly how it should. Daniel walked through the neighborhood slowly, observing every detail. His steps were calm, measured, and steady. He didn't rush, and he didn't react. He simply took everything in. His expression remained composed, showing no confusion, no frustration, only quiet confidence. By now, he understood everything clearly. The only thing left was timing. Soon, the matter moved into a formal setting where everything could be reviewed properly. The environment was calm and professional, with all documents prepared and organized. Each piece of information was presented clearly, making it easy to follow. There was no confusion, no missing detail. Everything was structured step by step. Daniel sat calmly, showing no signs of stress. He didn't need to say much. Everything had already been prepared. Across from him, Karen remained confident, believing everything had been handled correctly. From her perspective, there was no issue. The project had been completed and everything seemed in place. Then Daniel placed one final document forward. It was simple in appearance, but it carried everything within it. The official property deed, the one document that connected every detail together. As it was reviewed, the boundaries, ownership, and records became completely clear. There was no overlap, no confusion, no uncertainty. Everything was defined exactly as it should be. The room grew more focused as the details became clear. What once seemed certain now appeared different. Karen reviewed the document carefully, her expression shifting slightly as she processed the information. The clarity of the records left no room for doubt. The understanding in the room changed completely. Daniel remained calm, just as he had been from the beginning. He didn't need to explain anything further. The documents had already done that. Everything had been shown, clearly and directly. And sometimes, that is more powerful than any words. When everything concluded, the process was finalized with full clarity. Every document was recorded properly, every detail secured. There was nothing left unresolved. Outside, the neighborhood remained exactly the same, clean, organized, and peaceful. But the understanding behind it had changed completely. Daniel walked through the streets one last time, his steps steady and calm. The houses stood in perfect alignment, just as before. Nothing had physically changed, but the meaning behind everything had. He paused for a moment, looking around, taking it all in, not with frustration, but with quiet satisfaction. From a distance, the neighborhood looked like any other, just another place in a growing city. But behind it was a story built on awareness, patience, and timing, a reminder that understanding the full picture matters more than reacting too quickly. Sometimes the best move isn't immediate action, it's observation, it's patience, and choosing the right moment, because that's what truly changes everything. Choosing the right moment, because that's what truly changes everything.